This is a video that I'll go over when you should be using your daily resources in games like D&D 5e and Pathfinder 2e, which have Adventuring Day type things. Now, Adventuring Day concepts are much more important in a game like D&D 5, but Pathfinder 2 still has a lot of them through things like battle medicine or spell casting as a whole, because spell slots still exist in Pathfinder 2, and that means that some classes and some players will then need to deal with managing resources over a day. So, with that, let's just get started. And I believe there are two fundamental ideas that will push and pull on each other to figure out how many resources will I need to spend to get through this encounter. And I am going to dub those two philosophies or ideas, greed is good, and use it or lose it. Because, well, you'll see. Let's hop into Foundry and just go over some examples, because that'll probably make it a lot clearer. To keep things simple, let's use just the 4 base level 1 iconics as examples for resource expenditure. So let's start with Mercial because fewest resources. The only really per day thing is actually a per encounter thing, and that is Demoralize using Intimidation. And Valeros, of course, has Shield Block to trade in Shield Health for actual health on your character, but could make your shield unusable for the encounter or possibly permanently break the shield, and thus cost gold. So there is an overall resource. So, over here we also have in the proficiency list Trained Intimidation, so also an option to go for that Demoralize. Now, for the spellcasters, you will obviously have spells, and slotted spells, as a prepared caster, go away after they're used, so you need to be pretty careful about where you use them. And also, focus spells that are not exactly at will because they're once per encounter, still limited, still take a resource. And Ezran the Wizard, of course, same thing with spellcasting. So, with that out of the way, we can now get into an example of when greed is good. And the first example I'm going to use is for an encounter that is really, really easy. Because if these 4 level 1 characters were to fight a single level -1 character, they're just going to stomp it. No resources required. Because Valeros just walks up, I'm going to open up chat for this one, he's going to target, and then he is going to announce, I'm just going to double slice it, and then he's going to hit it, and he's going to crit it, and it's going to, guess what? Pop like a balloon. No resources need to be expended here. Like, in an encounter that is super, super easy, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be burning resources because, well, you're just going to win anyway. And if you don't need to spend resources, you probably shouldn't because, well, you might need them later. And that's really the core essence of greed, is this will probably be more useful later. I'm just going to keep on holding on to it. So you're hoarding all your spell slots and all your consumables like the giant dragon sitting on its pile of gold. And there's a second type of reason you would want to greed. It's a little bit more dangerous in the encounter, because this is a severe fight against a bunch of undead, and they're specifically skeleton guards. And so, at this point, the party, despite being low on spell slots, still has a good amount of HP, with both Valeros and Ezran still being technically within the green, and with the cleric and the rogue being completely untouched. So, as such, using a 3-action heal now? Not that great, because the skeletons aren't threatening to kill anybody, so why not just wait that extra turn? Cast a shield spell to make sure you're okay, and then let the skeletons come in a bit closer, let these ones come up from behind their cover and start running up, let these skeletons keep on shooting over the wall, and then when it comes down to it, all your allies are a little bit more damaged, so when that 3-action heal gets cast, you can just and hit everybody with it. Massive 3-action heal, everybody gets healed, all of them take a bunch of damage, and then all the undead have to make fort saves. Great, great stuff. And it can damage everybody, possibly kill a lot of them because they have really bad fortitude saves, and you can end the entire fight with only a single spell slot because you waited for everything to be in the right position. And, well, hit points are a per encounter resource. And you can trade hit points to buy yourself time against a lot of enemies. And marshals are particularly good at this because they tend to be bulkier. So, let the marshals take a couple hits. They can. And if they don't think they can, make them. You're the healer. You're in charge of who lives and dies, and make sure they remember. Because the next time they say casters are weak and you feel underappreciated, let them touch the ground once. They'll never forget. But anyway, back onto a normal topic. You can see that because Kara is able to wait, she's able to dispatch the entire encounter, because if they were still where they were back here, it would have gone for them, turned to a much easier fight, but it would not have ended it outright. And now the heal spell is able to get its full value, because if you and Merisiel got damaged as well from these two skeletons over here trying to not shoot around cover, well, then the spread out damage would all get healed by one spell slot, and you just basically wasted a bunch of the enemy's time with your spell. And also kill all of them. Great. Great example of how stalling can really give you an advantage. And slow rolling your resources to get a bonus, but this is a pretty weird and artificial scenario. So I'm going to go back to the other philosophy, the use it or lose it. Because in this scenario, if you decide to greed too hard, and you didn't want to use that slot until here, there's a very good chance you as the cleric just get surrounded and then dropped because you're too greedy as a caster. You need to at some point spend your resources in these difficult fights. If a fight is severe or greater, you should be expecting to burn some spell slots on it. And if you have no spell slots or no ability to get burst healing out in a fight, you should probably try and find some way to fit in a rest. Because healing isn't necessarily needed, like in combat healing, but it's needed if somebody goes down and things get scary. So as such, you're really going to want to have access to some form of healing if you're in these longer fights. Or these harder fights, I should say. And because of that, it is not always correct to save these spells. Because even if I go back to here, I said that it would make the fight basically one to use it here. So if Kyra had a lot of other healing spells and like other things that she wanted to do, after some point, she'd cast the healing spell here, try to kill the four of them, get some healing off from the allies. That's still incredibly good. Then the only counter left is these two skeleton guards. And then, oh look, you turned a severe encounter into something that's been solved and a trivial encounter. Because this is just like the rat from earlier. You don't need to spend anything here. Because you spent it early, you don't have to lose more resources. Because there is an advantage to throwing out your resources first. I'm going to give you an example of that. Here in this encounter, our level 1 party is staring down an entire owlbear. An owlbear has 70 HP. They're going to have a very rough time at beating this thing down. But the party still has spellcasters and they have resources. So, Ezran can look at the character sheet and go, okay, this is going to be a very hard fight immediately. Because an experienced Pathfinder player would know, if you look at an owlbear, it's a level 4 creature that is terrifying for a party of level 1s. And it is going to scream, it is going to make everybody frightened, it is going to grab you with its talons, and then is going to knot your intestines and just make your entire life awful. So, how do we deal with it? Well, Ezran is going to answer by making it dead. And he is going to cast Magic Weapon on the fighter immediately. And put it onto the longsword. So that way now the fighter has this damage boost so that they can potentially chunk down some of that HP and make it so that the owlbear is less dangerous eventually and bring this fight to an end where the party is winning. Because by burning Magic Weapon earlier rather than later, you're getting a lot more value out of it. Now, that sounds obvious. Use your buff spells early. Yeah, great analysis, Swing Ripper. What a brilliant idea. But this can win many, many fights by just putting a buff spell on somebody that is very impactful, and then the enemy comes to you, get into a flanking position, you double slice them in the back, and you gradually chunk them down. And with Magic Weapon, you're going to be chunking them down a lot faster than you would have otherwise. But maybe that example is a little too easy. So let's go for something that's maybe a little less exaggerated. Alright, so here's the scenario. This level 1 party's fighting a bunch of goblins. They know this guy over here is a pyromancer, so Valoros hit him with attack of opportunity as he ran away, and stuff happened, damage was marked. This guy in the middle gets stabbed by Mauricio and dies because rogue sneak attack is a lot of damage, and this is where the party is. Some of them are damaged, some of them are not. The fight has just really started. Cleric takes a hit, goes down to 12, you know, standard encounter against goblin stuff. Now, Ezra knows this pyro has burning hands and is likely to step here and fire off its 15-foot cone AoE. That is a burst, not a cone. His 15-foot cone like so. And hit all of his friends. But he also knows, wait, I have a way I can guarantee get this guy out of the fight. Because he's about at half HP, spellcasters tend to be frail. I have Magic Missile, or Arcane Bolt, if you're coming here after the remaster. So, because of this, he knows he can cast Magic Missile, spending the final spell slot, and put 3 missiles into this guy. Damage, damage, damage. And that is enough to take this guy out, making him dead, 0 HP, dead. Nice. So as such, this golem can die, and it will never get off that Burning Hands, because if you use your resources to kill an enemy early in the fight, you prevent that enemy's ability to deal damage. So in essence, lethal damage is a healing spell, because you just healed for all the damage that enemy was about to do. I'm going to just say that one more time. Damage spells are healing if it kills. It is a wonderful, wonderful thing that I can say something like that with a straight face and mean it. Now, if you watched my video about damage and how much it matters, you would remember my Sonic the Hedgehog theorem, where as long as you have 1 HP, you are still a threat. So, if you can use your spells to guarantee you take out something's last HP, and it's a resource to do so, and they're coming up in initiative, you remove a turn from the enemy, you remove some of their offensive strength, you free up your healers to do other things, and it might end up the party burning less resources overall, because not only did you prevent their damage that turn, which is what a healing spell would do, you prevented it on all future turns. So by spending your resources earlier in a fight, you make the rest of that fight significantly easier, and thus save resources long-term overall by burning early. But if you're burning damage early every fight, you're going to run out of things. And that's where we get back to this. Inside of you, there are 2 wolves. Greed is good, and use it or lose it. And that's where the game is. It's about, what do I need to spend to make sure we get out of this okay with the minimum amount of resources spent? Sometimes, greeding means using it earlier in the fight so that you know you don't need to spend stuff later. Because just holding on to everything and constantly carrying all your consumables around means you're never using them, which means you basically don't have them. Because if you never use your spell slots in Venturing Day, you're going to get that long rest eventually anyway, and they're going to go away. So you eventually just have to use them, or you will lose them. But if the Adventuring Day is long, or the encounter drones on, or a lot of people get unlucky, you're going to wish that you had stuff left over. And a lot of the game is in finding the balance between these 2 things. These 2 ideas. And, well, I don't have a good, clean answer for exactly when each can do what, and what the exact good play is for every scenario, but I hope this video at least gave you something to think about. And I had some fun making it. Subscribe if you want to. Otherwise, that's fine too. I just know that this graph makes me sad. That's it.